I'm also trying to plug in questions that we're getting in the chat. Sancha, there's a very simple question, but I mean, I think the simpler it is, the more we'll get to unpack. Is media a form of humanitarian aid? And if yes, does misinformation and disinformation impact it? How can we counter it?
Well, I would consider it to be integral to humanitarian aid for all the reasons that colleagues have mentioned and a cornucopia of others. I think it has always been part of it. It has also been part of and central to and supporting narratives of war and conflict and violence and division and racism and all the structural inequities and inequalities that have resulted in violent unrest. So it's part of the solution, and it is very much being part of the problem, and will always be that. And so if we take it as a standing point or starting point that it is part of humanitarian aid, then today, mis and disinformation, but also malinformation, but however we want to call it, basically information that seeks to misinform and capture audiences around narratives that are self-serving, are integral to and inextricably entwined with the media that is produced on or from a conflict. And this is true around Syria. This is true around the Ukraine. This is true around Myanmar, Afghanistan, and certainly Sri Lanka as well. And then the issue then becomes, there's a whole different set of questions you need to ask then around media literacy, how you sift the chaff from the weed, how you get around this problem, which is not going to go away. It's going to get more complicated and complex. We are talking about stuff like deep fakes and even shallow fakes, complicating what we consider to hold to be true. We have seen examples of this just over 2022 around the Ukraine, but this is not new in the sense the tech is getting better. And then we have the elephant in the room. We are on a platform that has, got its, become a household name because of the pandemic. But we also have Facebook and Twitter and TikTok and YouTube and a cornucopia of other social media platforms. And the issue there is that what are they doing to address the second part of that question, which is mis and disinformation? I have been very public in saying that they have can't swear on this call, but they don't have a clue. And that might, for some, joining the call sound incredulous, but it really is the case that they don't have an idea around how to fix this. And you have to just Google Kenya today to find out how in 2022, they're still dealing with and unable to really address that which has plagued Afghanistan and India and Sri Lanka and Myanmar and every other imaginable context and marker that you can think of. So that elephant in the room, who are your partners, right? I mean, you work with these companies. They need to step up and hopefully also strengthen their ability to ensure that mis and disinformation don't misinform platforms that are integral to humanitarian aid, because they also communicate life-saving information as well. So you can't take them out, but very often the problem is today keeping them in and the degree of harm over help that they engineer and engender. So it's a complicated, I'm sorry for complicating things. My colleagues, I hope, will forgive me, but it's a simple question, but you really need to think that through. And I hope I gave a sufficient answer to the person who asked the question.